Hello, classmates and Professor Child. Today I'm going to be doing my YouTube final presentation on hip hop and how it applies to social justice in society. So first I want to talk about the scale of hip hop. It's been the front of center mainstream media for a long time and is currently bigger than when it started. I would say some of the bigger hip hop artists have been at the top of the Spotify and Billboard charts for probably the past 10, 15 years. There's a lot of different type of rappers out there spreading a lot of different messages. Some are positive and some are not so positive, possibly a little bit negative. So I want to see how big social justice is a part of their music and themes, if it has anything to do with their music and themes at all. This form of media is a powerful tool in youth socialization before they have a chance to learn in a classroom. Hip hop has already subconsciously taught them about race, class, and gender roles. Before kids have a chance to hear what a teacher or even their own parents have to say about social justice, they hear thousands of hours worth of music, leaving a strong impression on them. And I would say it's getting worse slowly. So let's look a little bit at the statistics of children and having screen time and possibly listening to some of this music. So we'll start at the age of 2 and below 2. They're already at 1 hour and 3 minutes of daily screen time, with 40% owning an iPad by the age of 2 already. So, I mean, to me, that's insane, and I would never, ever tell anybody how to raise their kids, but I think that putting a screen in front of a baby is just not the best way to help them develop their brains. But as you can see already, they might start to have a presence right out the gate. And as we get up to 2 to 8 years of age, they have 3.5 hours of screen time daily, and then from 8 to 12, it's 5.5. So you can see it's getting more and more and more as they get older, and I imagine the teenage years it gets even worse than that once they start earning an iPhone or an iPad. This music works its way into subconscious conditioning of what a man and a woman would sound like and look like, or how a racial group behaves or should behave. Cool tells us that cultural conditioning through mass media is continuous, invisible, and highly effective at reinforcing societal norms, and I completely agree with that. It's always happening, whether you realize it or not, and then starting from a younger age. So I picked a few artists for modern hip hop that kind of hit the different spectrums. I didn't want to pick the obvious ones. I wanted to kind of pick one from every corner. So first, one of the more popular ones is Kendrick Lamar. He calls himself in the top 5, maybe the top 1 rapper. Also tells people that he is not a savior. He has a quote saying, "The cat is out of the bag. I am not your savior. I find it just as difficult to love thy neighbors," saying that he's had his own issues with his own people and his own community, and people shouldn't be looking up to him as a role model. He's an entertainer, he's a rapper, he's not a preacher, he's not a saint. But that being said, from his own words, I went ahead and looked at some of the receipts of some of the things he's done with his success, and I think he could beg a little bit different. As you can see here, he has a pop-out donation of $200,000 split across 20 different LA grassroots charities, 50,000 directly to his Centennial High School, and an additional 100,000 to after school programs that include sports and music and things like that. So he's putting his money not just back into the youth, but into his own community that he came from, trying to make it a better place. And then it takes that even further here, as you can see, with the systemic division. He's had rival gangs come on stage, and he's tried to dismantle the deep-seated systemic social hierarchies and conditioned prejudices exposed, and is everyone really equal, proving that marginalized communities can overcome forced division to create their own collective power. So what it's trying to say is, like, he knows where he comes from. He knows these deep-seated systemic issues and these different problems in his communities, and he's doing his best, his part, what he can, to try and fix it, and to bring gang members out on stage to try to solve some of the violence issues in his community. Is pretty huge. So, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good standard for, an artist or a rapper to have. So let's move to the other side of the spectrum and see if we can find any qualities in Playboi Carti. First off, I had to dig through a lot of lyrics here to kind of find the good ones, and most of his rap is all about money, women, and drugs, but every once in a while the facade cracks and he will slip out something about his inner self or something a little bit about his friends and his family. And one of his more famous lines is he bought a house for his mom off his mumbling rap, which was pretty much a shot straight at the critics saying, yes, you might not think that my personal type of hip hop, Tupac or Biggie, is not one of the greatest, but my own lane created enough money for me to support my friends and family, you know. And in a system of historically keeps black youth economically marginalized, Cardi has skyrocketed his way into wealth by playing off black stereotypes and prejudices, essentially throwing them back in the listener's face. Yeah, he's pretty much indulging in these stereotypes and prejudices. He's not fighting them at all. In fact, he's almost, using them as his own personality. And I think that comes down to how you want to look at it, which we're going to dig into a little bit here more in a second. You could either say that he is a victim to these stereotypes, or you could say that he's playing off of them and using them to increase his own success. It's a little bit of a paradox, and I think it comes down to the listener. It's going to come down to what you want out of the music. But from the perspective of is everyone really equal, this raises a critical question. Is Cardi truly destroying oppression and climbing the capitalist ladder? Or is he reinforcing harmful dominant group stereotypes, harming the black youth socialization? I will leave that up to you. I will say one last thing about Cardi. When digging on him, it was a little bit harder to find any justifying substance within him. He's a very, first off, he's a very closed off artist. And second, his music is very surface level, and it's more about production, and it's more about his flow and his different types of beats and things like that than the actual subject matter of his music. So we're going to move on to a female rapper, Cardi B, who is also a very controversial figure. Some people labeled her as a feminist, and then other people say that she's holding women back. A self-proclaimed rags to riches, that's her quote, by the way. Cinto and D'Angelo don't like that phrase, but that's her quote. She's been open about her controversial past of being an exotic dancer, and even going as far as to claiming she's drugged and robbed a client of hers during an interview, which became a big source of controversy that a lot of people brought up a lot. She openly models and promotes female financial independence, sexual agency, and the dismantling of double standards in a male-dominated industry. She owns her aggressive tactics and weaponizes it against her critics. So she's not trying to hide who she was or who she is. She's very proud of it. She's proud of where she came from. She's used it to grow. Without that background, she wouldn't be who she is today. And she 100% fully admits that. And I think that's a little bit about that female empowerment that some of the people who claim she's a feminist is. She also won a Grammy for Album of the Year for, I believe, her first album, which is a major accomplishment for a female, an African-American female artist. While she uses her creative agency to challenge male power critics and argue her hyposexualized image, simultaneously profits off a patriarchal media structure. So it's kind of up to, like Cardi, the listener, whether you want to believe she is a good figure for the community or she's holding it back. And then now we're going to go for our most controversial person out here, Kanye West, and what he's done for the hip hop community and for the urban and African-American community as well. Imagine being one of the biggest artists in the world and then self-sabotaging yourself over and over. He's criticized Bush. He's crashed the Taylor Swift's award speech. He's a MAGA Republican supporter. And then recently he's had openly anti-Semitic comments, just to name a few of his controversies. Is Ye challenging the system? Are the antics deeper than the headline grabbers? Early in his career, he had a video pulled from TV for using controversial religious imagery in the song and video Jesus Walks. And he's also compared modern consumerism to the prison industrial complex song New Slaves, which was about 10 or 15 years ago. All concepts that invert expectations of African-American artists in the limelight. West has advocated for mental health before it was a trending subject, not only bringing light to it, but admitting that he himself suffers from bipolar disorder. He has also criticized how society treats mental health, particularly for black men, putting "I hate being bipolar, it's awesome" on one of the covers of his album. Kind of ahead of the time on the kind of the mental health crisis and topics. So West currently put himself under serious scrutiny, tweeting DEFCON 3 on Jewish people and bringing heavy backlash against him him. His reaction to this was to double and triple down on the comments and remarks, which ended up getting him banned from quite a few countries, and he lost a very big deal with the athletic gear brand Adidas. It ended up costing him a lot of money due to these remarks and comments. Is Kanye's modern rhetoric shows how a minoritized individual can transition from fighting systemic oppression to actively spreading harmful and dividing narratives of the dominant group. Of course, he's challenging the system a lot, but also some of the things he's doing and saying are harmful to the community as well. So in conclusion, you may have noticed a lot of these artists draw a fine line between controversial and educational within their context, and I think that the ambiguity is the point here. They are here to grab your attention and ask questions, but for a lot of the time, it's up to you to come up with the answer. It's up to the listener to come to the conclusions of what they're actually trying to say or what they want you to know. Whether we like it or not, artists have the ear of our youth culture and the modern society. Whether they use it for good or for social change is up to them. But we should ask ourselves, is it really their job? Especially for hip hop. You know, a lot of this is music for adults. And I know that kids hear it, but we have to sit back and ask ourselves, is it really this artist's job to spread these positive messages? I think we have a responsibility to teach ourselves and the children the difference between entertainment and education. We cannot simply ban or ignore influential media. Instead, we must develop critical media literacy to recognize when entertainment is reinforcing or challenging societal power structures. Yeah, so there's a little look at the modern hip-hop world and how it relates to social justice in the society. So thank you very much.